The A-Game Show with MIAA Commissioner Mike Racy back again this week. Sir, thanks for taking the time out, and let's talk quite a few things this week, don't we?
Yeah, we got a busy show here. A good list of topics, and it's good to see you, Chris. Good to be back with you.
Good to see you. Now, I will say I am doing this from home again, and there's a chance my dogs will be a little chatty. They've been chatty all morning, so we'll just see how this goes with them. They see something outside, and yeah, you can probably guess a squirrel will get the dog's attention. But we'll,
Absolutely.
we'll start with
Understand.
the start of the football season here. Hard to believe we're already a few weeks into MIAA football. A lot of different outcomes and game scenarios have happened. Just overall thoughts of what you've seen so far through 2 weeks of MIAA football.
Good football, and I'm happy the weather's feels like it's starting to transition a little bit from summer to fall. Little cooler temperatures, which will be good as we get into the Saturday afternoon part of our MIAA football schedule. But we've seen some good games. I've been to Pitt State, Northwest Missouri State, and this past Saturday I was in Warrensburg, and I've seen some good games, and we've got a couple of good ones on the schedule this week. I'm interested to see how that Pitt State at Central Missouri game goes on Saturday. The Mules look pretty good, certainly putting up some points offensively, and Pitt State's off to a 2-0 start. Emporia, they've got their offense humming, and we kind of knew that going into the year that Emporia State had a bunch of weapons back and looked good offensively. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing pretty good quarterback play, a lot of points in the MIAA this year. I think we've got three teams ranked in the top 15 right now. And I'm certainly got my fingers crossed that we're going to be able to put three teams in the playoffs at the end of the year. But I think things are off to a good start. As usual, looks like we'll have some teams in the MIAA that are at least going to be in the hunt for a playoff run and maybe a national championship.
It seems like already we're kind of seeing the MIAA, and this happens every year with how the schedule is based, with the conference-only schedule for the most part now, knock each other around a little bit, and that could always impact playoff implications. But we're already kind of seeing that already, right? The MIAA doing what it always does and kind of knocking each other around here in the first 2 weeks. That there's a lot of, I think, unknowns still, a lot of good unknowns, I should say, about what some of these teams will be too.
Yeah, I think folks thought, going into the year that Pittsburgh State, Emporia, Northwest would be good, but I think the middle of the conference was kind of up in the air, kind of an unknown, and who would maybe make a run, and certainly Central Missouri off to a 2-0 start. They probably aren't surprised. I think they obviously have a number of transfers, some people that they brought in that they thought could play and be successful in the MIAA, but I think they've caught a few folks off guard, and we'll see on Saturday. A great way to measure just how good that offense is against maybe one of the best defenses in the country in Pittsburgh State. We've talked before, Chris, that doesn't seem right in Division II football, where the strength of football is in the Midwest, the North and the Midwest, and then also in the South. And we've got an equal distribution of playoff spots across the four geographic regions. And but it is what it is, and we can't change that right now. We're trying to make some changes, but that's going to take some time. So we just have to hope for the best, that as we're beating up on each other, the folks that are involved in regional rankings and ultimately selections understand how strong this conference is in football. And I think they do. I think people that are involved in the process will be able to measure and compare how good the MIAA is stacked with other conferences. we're playing a full Division II schedule. Each of our schools are playing 11 Division II opponents. There's not an off week in the MIAA, and we'll see what happens. I'll say too, Chris, that in Division II football, like Division I, there are postseason opportunities outside the NCAA with bowl games, and actually had a text message communication from one of the bowl game managers yesterday, watching MIAA, excited about what he sees in the middle of our conference, and already putting in a claim for an MIAA school that doesn't make the playoffs to be their bowl selection. So that hope is alive for every one of our programs right now this early in the season. If they don't make the playoffs, that perhaps there's some of those other postseason opportunities waiting as well.
Getting ready for week 3 of the MIAA football season. Should be another fun weekend. And let's go back a few weeks. A very historic event and that transpired up in Lincoln at University of Nebraska. I'm trying to find the right words, because seeing that crowd for everything that happened with the volleyball day in Nebraska, the world-shattering attendance, just was pretty phenomenal to see that, and to see how much support came out for Nebraska Kearney, and then also Nebraska and Wayne State and UNO, just kind of having all of them out there playing volleyball too.
Yeah, it was. I was happy that I got to be there. It was an historic night, and really a number of magical moments that night. A night that gave me plenty of goosebumps, being in the crowd, 92,000 people watching college volleyball. I think about a couple of moments. One, seeing Nebraska Kearney and Wayne State in a 3-set exhibition, and seeing that it was about half full, Chris. A lot of people in red that got there early to watch Division II exhibition match. So, 50,000 people watching a Division II volleyball match. That was very cool. And then as Nebraska Kearney as the Nebraska Cornhuskers and Omaha finished warming up, and they went to the national anthem. The national anthem was beautiful. It was well done. And then they had the flyover, and seeing those planes roar over 92,000 people, and then back to the singer to finish up the anthem after the flyby. That was a magical moment. And then probably the best, and you've probably seen this on YouTube, Chris, that tunnel walk by the Nebraska volleyball team, and Coach Cook leading the way, and walking out, the crowd just going nuts, seeing that on the big board, watching as the team's coming out of the tunnel. The doors open, just the same way as a Cornhuskers football game. The doors open, and the student athletes get to come out and, in this case, take the court instead of the field. But it was something I'll never forget. There were a lot of people there, a lot of Olympians, a lot of professional volleyball players, a lot of people from the NCAA staff were there. And I think it was just a great day for not just volleyball and volleyball in the state of Nebraska, but I think for women's athletics, Chris, just to see that kind of a moment for women's NCAA volleyball, women's sports. It probably won't probably take a couple of years for us to truly understand what that moment meant, but it was certainly a lot of fun to be there.
Like you said, we may not know what it meant for a while, but how can this help? I mean, obviously we've seen the support for women's athletics grow a ton in the last several years, just kind of what we've seen with events like this. And then you also see how big the College Softball World Series has become a Division I level, everything like that too. But how can this help continue to grow and get more eyes on women's sports at the college level?
Well, a couple of things that stuck with me: the number of high school and AAU teams that were there together. Um, that was really impressive. The number of teams getting out of their buses to come in as a group to watch that event, and then um, I was just struck by the number of moms and dads with young girls that were there, and they were really into it. And so I just think that um, like historically, like we've had in college athletics with um, role models that we see on TV and commercials, coaches that you recognize their faces. I think just the opportunity to have that spotlight shine on women's volleyball and women's softball at the College World Series, and certainly women's basketball and the viewership that they got last year during March Madness. I think
Mm-hmm.
those are all things that really allow young women, young girls to dream about being a college athlete. And, my message to mom and dads is let them dream and let them explore all of that. And there are plenty of opportunities in the MIAA if you want your daughter to have a great experience, get a great education, and to compete on teams in women's sports that are their goal is a national title. Whether we're
Right.
talking women's soccer, women's basketball, women's volleyball, women's softball. We've got programs in the MIAA in every sport where women's athletics is in the hunt for a national championship. And so that's what I was thinking about while I was watching all these young people at that event. Is, man, how many of those young girls are we going to see on a Nebraska Kearney court playing volleyball, or maybe one of our other MIAA schools if they choose to leave the state of Nebraska and come someplace else. But that's really, I think, that moment continues to create those dreams, those hopes for young women to have those chances to earn a scholarship and play the sport they love.
Again, like you said, an incredible night there for the volleyball day in Nebraska. Like you said, 92,000, a world record. Just an exciting time, I think, with just being able to watch that and witness everything that went into it. But let's go ahead and switch gears to the presentation of the Mentor of the Year award. For people who don't know, I'll go ahead and kind of let you kind of explain out a little bit more of what the Mentor of the Year award is, and stuff like that too.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite awards, and last year I got to go up to Nebraska Kearney and present the award at halftime of one of their football games. This year, a week from Friday, I'm going to be in Claremore, Oklahoma, at Rogers State at their soccer match, and I'll have the opportunity to present the Mentor of the Year award. That this is an award that was started by our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and the Student Athlete Advisory Committee nominated. At Rogers State nominated Marina Flores, a graduate assistant in athletic student athlete development and wellness, and serves as the mentor and advisor for the Rogers State Student Athlete Advisory Committee. She was selected in a number of different nominees from across the campus. And this award was started by SAC to really identify someone on one of our campuses that's had a profound impact on the lives of student athletes on campus. So this is an award selected by student athletes for the impact an administrator on one of our campuses is having on the lives of student athletes. And I know SAC puts a lot of work and effort into not just nominating people, but then actually the selection process. And Marina is a former student athlete herself. And I'll read one of the things. I think this is pretty cool in her nomination, Chris. One of the student athletes wrote, Marina Mariana has been a role model for all SAC members. She has placed importance on the mental health of every student athlete at Rogers State. Her attitude, passion, determination have made an impact on every single one of us. And we know it will continue to allow her to succeed and make a difference in people's lives on our campus. Thank you for being our mentor. So, just that type of endorsement in a nomination, where it is that personal. And as I said, it's always a thrill when I get to go and make that presentation. So we'll be announcing that here in the next couple of days, Chris, that Rogers State will be taking home that award this year. And I look forward to making that presentation at their upcoming soccer match.
It'll be a pretty cool moment for everybody down there at Rogers State. Next Friday, the 22nd, that is when you'll be presenting the Mentor of the Year award. Let's talk scheduling, because every fan likes to talk scheduling, right? Kind of the what are things going to look like in the future and everything, too. With Arkansas Fort Smith joining, what does that do to the entire process for scheduling, too?
Well, so they'll join the league, as everyone knows, next fall, and we'll do obviously an opportunity to have an orientation and to start to bring them to meetings this year. But yeah, the hard part, Chris, is trying to figure out, okay, these schedules that we have in place beginning next fall, those need to change. And, oftentimes it's not as easy as just taking Lincoln out of a schedule and plugging Arkansas Fort Smith in. And I think a lot of people think that's the way it works, but it doesn't. The reason is that in many of our sports, Chris, we have travel partners, meaning that, we've got two teams that or two universities that are in close proximity to each other. We send them on the road together, or we have them both at home together. And that way, when they are at home, a team that is coming to visit doesn't have to travel far, for instance, in basketball between their Thursday and Saturday match. If they want to stay out on the road, they could go to Emporia one on Thursday, and then they can be in Topeka, Washburn for their game on Saturday without, having to have a pretty big distance between opponents. So the process that we use to figure this out is we have a scheduling subcommittee in the conference. They're busy meeting. It's being chaired this year by Stan Wagner at Central Oklahoma. And Chris, it's something we're going to have to look at for really trying to find new travel partners in many of these sports. Who's going to line up with who. Really impact Central Missouri with Lincoln leaving. Central Missouri and Lincoln have been paired. Arkansas Fort Smith coming in at kind of the southeast part of the conference. We're going to have to find a travel partner for them. So that's going to mess up some current travel partners probably in that part of the conference footprint right now. But we hope to have all that wrapped up by the NCAA convention in January to have an idea what our basketball schedule is going to look like, our volleyball, our baseball schedule. We're going to have to redo that, the tennis schedule. So, any of these sports where Lincoln was in the schedule and adding Rogers or Arkansas Fort Smith for sports that they sponsor, and having to go in and get new schedules built and ultimately approved.
All right, let's talk more hypotheticals then. What would a North and South division in football look like with scheduling if the conference expands to 12, maybe 14 schools? Because I know that's a topic of conversation that you guys continue to have, is what's that sweet spot number for MIAA football teams too?
Yeah, so with losing Lincoln, we have a plan in place for what we're going to do in the fall of 2024, and we're going to have 11 teams that will play 10 conference games with a rolling bye week. We're certainly hopeful that the week 0 legislation gets adopted at the NCAA convention, and that provides some scheduling relief in being able to have that non-conference game for everybody at the beginning of the season in week 0. and then that rolling bye week is just an off week. But we are, we've talked before, we're in the mode of trying to grow the MIAA, and we like to grow it in football with football institutions. And whether we grow by 1 to get to 12 or whether we grow by 3 to get to 14 members, I think the plan, Chris, is that we'll go into some sort of a divisional alignment. And, what that looks like and how it's organized hasn't been fully vetted. But our ADs and our presidents still have to put a stamp of approval on,
Right.
this is what we'd like to do. But I've had a conversation with a few ADs that believe that maybe there's a kind of a natural boundary around I-70 if we're going to be north-south. Schools north of that, that arbitrary boundary would be in the North Division. Schools south, whether it's on I-70 or a marker close by,
Right.
would be in the South Division. And how it would work, Chris, is that the first week or two in the schedule would be open for non-conference games, and schools would be allowed to go out and schedule, whoever they'd like to schedule to get non-conference games. Then, depending on if we're 12 teams or 14 teams, weeks 3, 4, and 5 would be likely games that would cross the divisional boundary. So it wouldn't count your divisional standings, but you would be be pre-assigned a cross-divisional opponent, north teams going south or south teams going north, to play teams in the other division. Not all of them, and that would rotate from year to year. And then the plan would be in weeks 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We'd have five weeks if we're at 12 teams where you would play your 5 divisional opponents, and a divisional record would be kept. And the plan would be then that week 11 would be kept open for another time to do cross divisional opponents. And the championship game would feature the cross divisional number 1 ranked teams facing off, hopefully in Kansas City, maybe at a beautiful place like the new Kansas City Current Stadium right on the river.
Nice spot.
But don't tell anybody that I mentioned that.
Right.
That's maybe a destination, but that's the type of venue that we'd be looking for to stage an MIAA conference championship match in football, where your divisional winners are squaring off. And then throughout the rest of the conference, it would be predetermined whether that last week of cross-divisional games would be in the north or the south. So schools would know in either division if they're on the road or if they're hosting. But we try to match up teams that you hadn't played during the year for that type of cross-divisional opportunities. So that's the plan. There probably is a lot of work still to be done before that gets finalized, if that's the way that we organize football. But I think what that does, Chris, is it allows us to have a plan or a vision that we can, schools that are interested in being in the MIAA that have football, that are part of that northern boundary, would be able to see the schools that they would be playing every year in football. Schools that are in more of our southern boundary that would be interested in joining the conference would see what that divisional lineup would look like in football. Might be something we're able to use in other sports as well, but it gives us an opportunity, I think, to talk to schools that perhaps MIAA membership and that type of a schedule allows them to travel a lot less than what they're traveling now in their current conference. And as we've talked, Division II is all about geography, and the opportunity to talk to schools that may have some interest in the MIAA. We've got to be able to help them understand not only how it benefits the MIAA and benefits their institution long term, but how it makes sense geographically to be a part of our conference.
One last question for you to get you out of here on this one. With all that, is there that's going to take at least probably a little bit of time to get all that situated, because next year, obviously, like you said, the schedule's in place. But is this something that the MIAA wants to move pretty quickly on and kind of get this figured out, if it's 12, if it's 14, or what direction the league wants to go in?
Yeah, I think if there's a possibility to get this pulled together in time for the start of the 2025 academic year, so not next fall, but the following fall, that's kind of the game plan. And again, if we're adding one team or three teams, I think there's an opportunity to really take a hard look at this type of divisional alignment, at least in football, and what that does for our membership. The other thing I'd mention is when you have a conference that big, some of our teams are going to have a challenge to go out and find two non-conference opponents. And this type of divisional alignment, where really all you're caring about is your divisional record, it gives you a chance to perhaps go out and schedule a cross-divisional opponent that may not be on your schedule, and go ahead and play another team within the MIAA just outside of your division in week 1 or 2, if that's something two schools want to get together and agree to do. So provides a lot of scheduling flexibility the larger you have as far as a conference in Division II.
Lots of scenarios that could play out with that. I'm sure it's going to get a lot of people talking and chattering that, is it 12, is it 14, who could it be? So it's going to be a lot of fun in the next 12 to 18 months to kind of see all this unfolds. But MIAA Commissioner Mike Racy, thank you as always for the time. Pleasure talking to you, and looking forward to our next conversation too.
You bet, Chris. Good to see you. Thank you.
Take care.